What's going on? This is the format that you get because I am under time constraints at the moment, but I wanted to get a deck tech out about the deck that I played at Canberra, which is fast combo deck, Flash Hulk. I really think that this deck is a lot stronger than people are giving it credit for right now. Part of that is obviously the garbage Grixis matchup, but also I think that people might have been building this deck incorrectly. From the list that I've seen online, there are quite a few people playing versions and cards that I do not think are good enough at what the deck needs to fill their slots, but at the same time, they're not bad cards to include in a Flash Hulk deck. In fact, they're cards that I included when I started building. And when you see the cards that I replaced them with, you will call me insane. But if you bear with me, I think that there is room for Flash to be one of the stronger meta decks at the moment. And I'll get into why during the video. So what is Flash itself? We've got the card right here. You can read it. But basically, this card is fundamentally broken. Not in the sense that people usually mean, although it is broken in that sense, but it literally doesn't do the thing that it was supposed to do, right? It was intended as a way for you to cast a creature at instant speed by spending an extra card, basically. But the way that they've templated it actually made it really, really unbalanced. Basically, you can get any it enters or dies trigger of any creature in your hand for 2 mana at instant speed. There are some extremely expensive creatures that you will use with Flash that you do not intend to pay for, and in fact, you can win the game on the spot with Flash's best friend, Prote Hulk. Flash was kind of not really a big deck until Prote Hulk came along, but Hulk's ability to tutor any number of creature cards with a total CMC 6 or less, that doesn't really matter, you can win the game on the spot pretty much in a number of different ways. So why did I choose to play Flash at Canberra? Well, okay, so I started by wanting to build a version of the deck which I had seen a mate had advised me on, and I thought was, kind of fun, kind of interesting, wanted to give it a shot. So I got the cards, and then I was sick for 2 weeks, and I couldn't test anything else. I couldn't go out and play at local stores, and so by the time I was getting better, it's like, okay, well, there's 3-4 weeks until Canberra, and you want to have a lot of reps with the deck that you're bringing, so I'm bringing Flash Hulk. It does have an incredible matchup against the decks which beat Grixis. Eldrazi can't touch you. Fast aggro is not as fast as you, and generally doesn't have the right interaction to beat you, and you don't have a great control matchup, but the way that I've built the deck does give me a good matchup into other fast combo decks, which is very helpful, even though those decks also lose to Grixis. It's very resilient to common sideboard cards. Almost none of the common graveyard hate and removal can actually interfere with the combo. There are a couple of different combos. This is true for both of them. There are some things that people play sometimes, but they're pretty niche, and they're typically like 1 or 2 ofs. They're very unique effects, so they're pretty rare to come by. And also, a lot of people don't understand how your combos work, and that gives you a big knowledge advantage in terms of in sideboarding, because it's going to be pretty obvious what they're going to try and stop you with, but for them, it's not necessarily obvious how to stop you. So there's definitely an advantage to being the Flash player post-board because of that. There's also a high ceiling for execution. It is notoriously, and I get it, Flash is not interesting to play against. If you have the right interaction, you can win. If you do not, you will lose. It will be fast, and it will feel awful. But for the Flash player, there are a lot of different ways to build the deck, and there are a lot of different ways to play each card. In fact, there are many of your decision points come at instant speed, which is really, really interesting for playing and improving with a deck. So what is the kill? Older Flash Hulk decks started out with this sort of Karmic Guide, Kiki Jiki, and Viscera Seer loop. You would start by getting Karmic Guide and Viscera Seer. Karmic Guide puts back big protes, you get Kiki Jiki, and then you sort of loop copying Karmic Guide, sacking Kiki Jiki, bringing back Kiki Jiki so it's untapped, and you kill them with Karmic Guides. Recently, in Vintage and also in Highlander, and this is the deck that got me interested in Flash in the first place, people have been trying Nadu, because the Nadu package is 6 mana, and you can also get Dryad Arbor, which makes an extra Springheart token. It's extremely consistent. There's a bunch of advantages. I'll go over it in a minute. But this is a package that people have been trying out that seems really effective. There's also, if you don't want to go the Nadu route, there is the Cat combo where basically Cauldron Familiar drains your opponent for 1 and makes a food with Sam. You can sack it to the Viscera Seer, and then you can sack the food from Sam to bring the Cauldron Familiar back, drain them for 1, make a food, keep going. This combo, because it comes with multiple food tokens, is very resilient to the targeted graveyard hate that's very common. With just these cards, your opponent needs at least 2 copies of things like Cling to Dust, Ghost Vacuum, Unlicensed Hearse to actually snipe the Cauldron Familiar during the combo, because you sack the first food, they target it, you sack the second food, you keep going. It's really, really powerful, efficient, difficult to interact with, and you've got 2 mana left over with the Protean Hulk to get other utility pieces, which is obviously quite powerful. So what's good about Birdie Allen, the fastest combo alive? As a Flash deck, you have better options to play to the board. Like, your creatures are better. I'd much rather cast a Springheart Nantuko or a Nadu than a Cauldron Familiar or a Sam out of context. It beats Graveyard Hate. Yes, the Sam combo is resilient to Graveyard Hate, but you can still lose to Dothy Voidwalker. Nadu does not have that limitation, and so can be a lot stronger. Obviously, you'd much rather be able to do your Endurance loop, but if you can't, then Nadu still generates a ridiculously advantageous board state almost every time, so you'll kind of take that. There's also more usable unpointed tutors. You get to do things like Green Sun Zenith, you get to use Nature's Rhythm, like these cards that are much better with the Nadu combo that, like Flash, one of Flash's problems, and we'll get to that later, is it's really hard to assemble your combo. You need to find 2 specific cards very early in the game, and that costs a lot of points, and that takes a lot of bad cards. And so being able to just be like, hey, I can pay my creature's mana cost +1 and have it on the battlefield, this is a good card, right? As a Nadu deck, it is almost impossible to whiff the Nadu kill that you get off Flash. It's about 0.3%, not even factoring in like fetch lands that you hit off your first 10 free Nadu triggers. It's a great synergy if you've got a natural order package in your deck, which, if you're playing a green deck with Mana Dorks, you probably just should be doing. It's 0 points. It's the least fair. It's either the least fair way to play fair Magic, or the fairest way to play unfair Magic, depending on what you're talking about. You're playing Nadu. You don't care about fairness. You just want to kill them for 4 mana, and that is a thing that you can do with 2 mana, even with Nadu. If you're natural ordering things like, World Spine Worm, even, but just flashing in Atraxa is like, it's the best dig through time you'll ever cast. It's 3 times as many points, but it's the best dig through time you'll ever cast. Flashing Endurance, like I mentioned, makes your loop truly infinite. So you can actually just have your whole deck in your hand the entire time. If you're playing like counterspells, you can use the same counterspell over and over again, same removal spell over and over again. And you have... originally tested this with Pact Negation, and you can just pact as many times as you like because you have infinite mana by putting your lands into play over and over again, so you can just pay it on your upkeep. So what's bad about it, Bertie Allen? Because cards on the table, I did not bring this deck to Can Brawl, and there's just not that much actual overlap in the core shells. Nadu decks don't want tutors that find flash, so you're now playing a 3-point card and you're not going all in on it. You're just kind of having it. The big creatures that Flash likes aren't core to the Nadu deck. Nadu is good because the cards are cheap. And so even though, yes, Protean Hulk finds them all, you're adding extra dead draws to your deck if you don't have Flash to make it work. And also, like, Nadu just likes to play slower. Flash encourages you to win very quickly. It doesn't like it when you draw your combo pieces. And this is a lot more of a problem when your combo pieces cost 3 mana than when they cost 1. It's just... And yes, you know, adding a way to whoops into a win when your opponent is expecting you to play slower is a good thing to have. But it also adds a big tax on your deck building resources. It's also just spending 5 points on the win condition. Nadu, like, there are just 0-point options available for win cons with Flash, and there are 0-point options available for side plans in a Nadu shell. Like, yeah, it's really hard to justify splashing Nadu when, we'll talk about later, but Flash needs so many good tutors to work, and most of which are pointed, and it's even harder to justify splashing 3 points into any deck, right? And they're also the wrong colors. You'd think, oh, Nadu's a blue-green card, Flash is a blue card that wants me to play a green card, but realistically, Nadu is much more green than it is blue. It loves green tutors, it also loves green mana dorks, and it loves having white's interaction to play a long game. Because white also likes having a lot of creatures around. Meanwhile, Flash really likes blue tutors and black tutors, and it loves having counterspells and hand attack. And these are things that you do not get in green and white. So your Nadu decks are going to tend to be banned, with blue as the tertiary color, whereas your Flash decks are going to can be blue-green-black or blue-black-green, depending on how you build them. I think that the closer you are to blue-black, the more efficient your deck is going to be, but obviously you're going to need some of those really good green cards, which we'll get to in a second. So what problems does a deck need to solve? This is a thing that I think is really important when you're talking about fast combo deck, especially when you're going into a meta that is hostile to fast combo. The first thing is you are putting A and B together, right? So this is going to be one of the key things behind how I think about the cards that go into the deck. If I do not kill them quickly, I will lose because I do not have a secondary game plan. So I need to be able to consistently find my combo and consistently do that. Turn 4 is the absolute latest. Turn 3 is really good. Turn 2 is very funny, and turn 1 is hilarious. I did do that in the very final game of Can Brawl. I wish I had done it on coverage, but they're never going to put Flash Hulk on coverage because it'll take even faster than the 6-minute round that we had on the day. Turn 1 hand attack. This is the biggest way that you lose the game with Flash Hulk. Your deck is so fragile and it is so difficult to answer turn 1 hand attack to be prepared for and overcome, especially on the draw, because you don't have any mana resources. You don't have the extra card resources, and your opponent, like, turn 1 hand attack on the draw often just loses you the game if your deck is not built to deal with it, and even if your deck is built to deal with it, isn't often not enough. It is a worse problem. So it is, in fact, so much worse that I consider black mid-range to be my worst matchup, followed by counterspell decks. It is if your deck has hand attack in it, that is a worse matchup for Flash Hulk than a deck that has blue but not black. That said, counterspells are the second biggest problem for the deck. Yes, they're much easier to play around because generally they're easy to see coming. Your opponent has to hold up mana for them most of the time, and you get to have your own counterspells and mana because you're choosing when to go. So they're obviously something that you have to prepare for, but they're a lot easier to prepare for than turn 1 hand attack. There's also post-board hate, and like I mentioned, this is not such a big problem right now, which is great for the Flash Hulk players, but it's also something that you do have to keep in mind a bit especially when you're building your own sideboard. So let's talk about my build. Not the build that I played at Canberra, but my actual current 8-point build. I think that it's optimal to be 7 points. We'll talk about 7-point builds after. I think they're actually quite similar, but let's go into the 8-point build for now. So, speaking of points, at 3 we have Flash. This should come as no surprise. It's in the name. The deck kind of doesn't work without it. At 2 points, we have Demonic Tutor. It's just getting either half of your combo for 2 mana. Really efficient. It is one of the best ways that you can spend turn 2. Or turn 1 with some acceleration. Like, it's just does the job. It's really hard to say more than that. And then at 1 point, we have 2 more tutors. Mystical Tutor, which gets... Usually it gets Flash. Sometimes it gets Summoner's Pact. It just also gets either half of your combo, basically. Wishcore Talisman also gets either half of your combo. And in the third slot, or in the last slot, we have Mental Misstep. I think Mental Misstep is better than another 1-point tutor for a variety of reasons. The biggest one being the biggest problem you have to solve is not losing to your own inconsistency, and that is why I'm spending 3 points or 4 points on tutors. The second biggest problem is hand attack, and Mental Misstep is the best way to respond to turn 1 hand attack on the draw. It's just super important to have. This card won me. I won far more games because I had Mental Misstep in my hand than because I had Merchant Scroll in my hand at Canberra, and I think that having Merchant Scroll instead of Misstep would be a massive, massive step down. That said, it's your 8th point. If you're playing 7 points, Misstep has to go, but it's still, if you are on 8 points, Misstep is just best in class. Now, for combo pieces, we've got a few different categories. We've got Flash, and definitely not Flash, Show and Tell. It's not as good as Flash. Everybody knows it. It is slightly better with one of the cards I'm about to tell you about, but it's here because if something unfortunate happens to Flash, you kind of need a backup plan. So Show and Tell exists. Sometimes you also just draw Show and Tell and a combo piece, and you kill them that way. Like, it's Show and Tell. It just wins you games, right? Then we have our friends of Flash. So Prote and Hulk, obviously. Worldspine Worm is the second best thing to do with Flash because it's just 2 mana, make 3 5/5s with Trample. It's ridiculously efficient. You often get to cast this during combat on your opponent's turn, block their entire board, and then kill them on the crackback, which is extremely funny. You also get to play a 15/15. I did almost have enough mana to hardcast this at one point. Sadly, did not, but didn't get all the way there. Atraxa is obviously the thing that you want to be doing with Show and Tell if you can. Atraxa is the worst thing you can do with Flash, and it's still pretty good. The thing about putting Atraxa into play with Flash is that it doesn't win the game. You wind up with a very strong group of cards, ideally a group of cards that does give you a way to win the game, but it doesn't leave you with any more board presence. It doesn't give you, it doesn't deal with your opponent's board. It's just a raw card draw effect, which is not always what you need. Wood for Primus is the most polarizing option. It's really, really good on turn 2 when you get to blow up both your opponent's lands. But it's often just not enough to win the game after that. It's just a 5/5 with trample. If it buys you enough time to win the game, then hey, great. But if your opponent kept a hand with just 2 lands, they were probably not in a good position to beat you anyway. That said, sometimes it absolutely does win you the game, and it's really valuable at sniping certain pieces of sideboard hate. Like, it's very funny into Grafticus Cage because you kill the cage with the first trigger and then it comes back. It's also a thing that kills Rest in Peace and other types of, hate that can be a problem for you. And then the combo that I'm playing is the cat combo. This is why it's called Big Prote's all-you-can-eat cat cafe and salad bar. This is a cat cafe right here. This is obviously Big Prote, and you can eat as many cats as you desire. Then card selection. We've got our tutors first up. In 0 mana, Summoner's Pact. This card is incredible. It is an instant. The things that find you instants or sorceries will find you Summoner's Pact, and then you can just... It's functionally Protean Hulk because it costs 0 mana. And you win the game before that trigger matters, or you can also win the game in response to that trigger, which is what part of the reason that the pacts are so incredible in Flash. At 1 mana, we have our Mirage Tutors and their poor friends, the Portal Tutors. This Personal Tutor is the worst individual card in this deck. It is the second worst card at being in this deck. Mystical obviously is pointed, very good. Worldly Tutor, Sylvan Tutor, very close in quality, but Personal Tutor does not find either of my combo pieces. It doesn't even find Summoner's Pact to find Protean Hulk. But we'll talk about cantrips in a minute. And Personal Tutor serves in this deck as a cantrip which always draws Demonic Tutor. And that is something that it did for me several times on the weekend, and I won every single one of those games. It's just a fact that in a deck that is so reliant on having 2 specific cards as Flash Hulk, a hand with 1 tutor and 1 cantrip is substantially worse at winning the game than a hand with 2 tutors. And so having more tutors in my deck, no matter how bad those tutors are, makes me more likely to win the game. There's also the fact that it is 1 mana. There are other tutors that put instant or sorcery cards, or even just cards, into your hand. I've tested a few. I tested Grim Tutor. I tested Solve the Equation. I tested Beseech the Queen. I went as deep as. And then there's Waterlog Teachings, which is a probably better version of Mystical Teachings. And the issue with all of these cards is that they cost 3 or 4 mana. If too many of your tutors cost more than 2 mana, it is really, really difficult to have good things to do on turns 2 and 3. The cheaper your tutors are, the more consistently you will win the game on turn 4, the more consistently you can win the game on turn 3 or even turn 2, because you just have more options for finding your kill by that time. Personal Tutor is a bad card. It is card negative. It does not directly get your combo pieces. In fact, it asks you to spend more mana to do it. And yet, I still think that it is better than the 3rd best cantrip in this deck. Which is just insane, right? But that is how the deck's functioned, and that is how it has felt after all my testing. That also, it just gets show and tell if you need it to. It just gets show and tell, which is certainly one of the ways to use it, but I didn't end up doing that over the weekend. I found that getting Demonic Tutor won me more games. Yeah, that's the way it is. Up at 2 mana, we have half of my points and Limdal's Vault. Limdal's Vault is a card of which I have the opposite things to say to Personal Tutor. Limdal's Vault is so good. However good you think Limdal's Vault is, it is better than that. It is 2 mana Demonic Tutor. It is just instant speed Demonic Tutor. It costs you a couple of life. It's instant speed Demonic Tutor. You will pay life to have that. It's not pointed. It's not reserved. It's just broken. Play Limdal's Vault in your combo decks if they have access to blue and black. This card's obscene. You'll notice I'm not on Eladamri's Call. I do have a white land in here, but it's really to cast Sam if it gets stuck in my hand. Eladamri's Call is too hard to cast, even if I do go harder into being a white deck. I tested it for a while, just wasn't that good. And then I do have some 3 mana tutors, but they serve a very particular purpose. They're both ways to find Flash, Flash is a harder card to find than Protean Hulk. That's just sort of the way it is, so extra ways to find Flash are important. Muddle the Mixture is a counterspell. So if you have an extra tutor, there are 10 tutors here. So you're often going to have an extra tutor with your Muddle of the Mixture, and Muddle can protect your Flash from enemy interaction. That's just really, really useful to have. Dimir Infiltrator is a creature. You'll notice that I'm not on Spellseeker, because even Spellseeker, getting Summoner's Pact and being a blocker is not worth a whole point more than Dimir Infiltrator. I would rather just have Wishclaw Talisman. I can play Dimir Infiltrator as a way to turn my creature tutors into Flash tutors. And in fact, that is not something that I ever did on the weekend. It was not something I ever needed to do on the weekend. I just had enough other ways to find Flash, good enough mulligans that it didn't come up. And thankfully so, because that is one of the most ridiculously inefficient lines in my deck. In fact, I would be willing to cut Dimir Infiltrator for Shred Memory at the moment, just because Shred Memory is a crazy good utility option. It's basically a pre-sideboard card against a lot of combo decks like Storm or Breach, which can be really funny to have if just, end step Intuition. Okay, still in my end step, I'll exile the cards that you got with Intuition, stuff like that. So it's very good. You'll also notice I'm playing a lot of top deck tutors. 5 of these cards, fully half of them, put the card that you find on top of your deck. Yeah, it's not easy. You need to play extra lands, basically, because you're not going to draw many more than the ones that you start in your hand. There are upsides and downsides, but it's part of the reason that I think people don't want to play builds like this, because you just look at the number of top deck tutors and you're like, this is impossible. I'm never going to draw a single card. But the cards that you do draw win you the game. So I think that it's worth it. That said, completely understand why people would look at this suite and be like, here's gone off the deep end. Anyway, as for cantrips, we've got a few different categories here. The best one, you all guessed it, it's an absolute staple. Every blue deck should be playing it. It's Gitaxian Probe. It's a 0 mana way to draw the card that I put on top of my deck with a Sylvan Tutor or a Personal Tutor, or a Mystical or Worldly Tutor, I guess. Being able to cast those cards on your opponent's end step is obviously a big advantage. It also looks at your opponent's hand, which is basically, it does the best hand attack impression that you can get at 0 mana and also drawing a card. It just tells you whether you get to win the game right now or not. Gitaxian Probe's busted. Also pretty good is this card Brainstorm. I've heard some people think it's alright. Ponder is... I begrudgingly play Ponder. I play Ponder because it makes my mulligans a bit smoother. I can keep more hands with less lands in them because of Ponder. I can keep more hands with fewer pieces that I want because of Ponder, but it doesn't feel... It just feels fine. I didn't want to put it in the deck. At the end, at the end of the day, it's been performing okay, but it's not as good in this deck as it is in a lot of other decks. And then in outright terrible, I think that the worst card in my deck is Preordain. This card has never felt good to cast. I do not enjoy scrying with it. It almost never finds me the thing that I'm looking for, and keeping a hand with Preordain in it feels like a concession to the fact that I'm only playing 20 lands. I would keep a 1 tutor, 1 ponder hand at probably 5 or 6, if it wasn't a 7. I would feel really bad about keeping a 1 tutor, 1 preordain hand. This card is just not doing really what you want. But I'm playing 5 functional Mirage tutors, so it's kind of something that I have to live with. Then there's Recovery. Aurora Procession is obviously a great inclusion. It is a 2-mana blue instant, so everything which finds Flash finds Aurora Procession when Flash is already in your graveyard. It's also an instant. The card's brilliant, does exactly what you need it to every time. But I think even better than Aurora Procession is Noxious Revival. This card has seriously overperformed my expectations of it since day one, and this is one of the best cards in the deck. This is rivals Brainstorm in terms of, like, if I had to cut one of them, I probably cut Noxious Revival, but it's close. This card is almost as good at fighting hand attack than Mental Misstep. They take the card away from you, you put it back on top. You probably weren't going to rely on drawing something on turn 1. You should be keeping... In this deck, you should be keeping hands where you know what you're doing on turn 1 anyway. It also lets you rebuy tutors. There are a number of games where you can just go turn 2 Demonic Tutor, end step Noxious Revival, Demonic Tutor, turn 3 land, Demonic Tutor, fast mana Flash. Like, you just win the game. It's just so good. It's so versatile. It's so free. Noxious Revival's busted. Then also, there's one more way to recover things out of my graveyard, and that is Miracle Max, baby. You know, I'm playing Magic the Gathering, so there's got to be a Miracle Max in my deck. This card is not my favorite. It feels really bad to flash in, unless you've got to. But if you have something big that has gone into your graveyard and has not been enough to win you the game, then you have 3 different ways to put it on top of your deck. So it certainly can come in handy. So, although it is it's mostly in here because it does allow you to play a slightly longer game if something goes wrong, right? And that's what all of these are about, right? It is something has gone wrong with Flash, what do now? And Metamorphosis Fanatic existing is a do that will help now. Sometimes Miracle Max is all you need. Now, interaction. Most of this is going to be focused around solving our two opponent problems of turn 1 hand attack on the play, on the draw, and enemy counter magic. So, to beat hand attack, I have brought hand attack. We've got the Holy Trinity of Thoughtseize, Inquisition, Duress, and Dreadfugue as well. All of these, these are your best turn 1 plays. Into any matchup, turn 1 hand attack tells you how quickly they're going to kill you, what they're going to try and interact with you with, and lets you take one of the best things at doing that. I think that if you wanted to make more room in the main deck, I would put Dreadfugue in the sideboard. I would not cut any of it. I think it's so important to have, especially when in post-board games, when you know that you're on the play, when you know that you'll get to be on the play, being able to have 4 whole hand attack spells to reliably lead on hand attack, to take your opponent's counterspell, take your opponent's hand attack, and protect your combo from their interaction. Super, super important. That said, I board it out a lot. When I know that my opponents don't have hand attack or counterspells, I board it out. When I know that I'm going to be on the play, I board it out. It's a great freedom to swap in the pieces that you need for other things, right? That said, there are some matchups where I'll keep it. Like into blue mid-range or control, I'll keep the hand attack, at least some of it, even if I am on the draw, because I can use it to clear out a counterspell before going for the combo. It depends on how much of the other interaction I'm keeping, what I expect them to fight me with. But a lot of the time you do get to cut your hand attack, and that is important to know that that space is there when you're in sideboarding. Then, counterspells. We got these 5, and the first thing that you should notice about them is that 4 of them are free. Pact of Negation, just free counterspell. There's absolutely no downside to free counterspell in this deck. You just win the game. So, beginning of your next upkeep, never going to happen. And if it does, you win the game before the trigger resolves. It's fine. Spell Pierce, the only one that isn't free, is 1 mana. Force of Negation is only free on your opponent's turn, which obviously is completely balanced when you can win the game with your own instant spell on your opponent's turn. Although, don't expect Force of Negation to counter your opponent's spells when they have a Voice of Victory in play. You can definitely lose the game to doing that, I've heard. Someone close to me might have experienced that on the weekend. But otherwise, these cards are all very good. Mental Misstep I mentioned already. I did consider Force of Will, but a second counterspell that puts you down a card in a deck that already likes to mulligan a lot wasn't worth a point as much as just pay 2 life, don't get hand attacked. Yeah, there might be metagames where Force of Will is better than Misstep. I do not think that this is one of them. I think that black mid-range is everywhere, and you kind of have to be prepared to deal with that. And Misstep answers it better, because it doesn't ask you to 2-for-1 yourself, which is very important in this deck. Even Force of Negation, there were times that I found myself without a blue card to pitch to it, which is a real cost. Interaction, Other. There are 2 cards in this category. There's Dismember, which is my only removal spell in the main. I almost cut it, but the thing is, in the games where it's good, it's Time Walk. It's just... Sometimes it saves you 3 to 4 points of damage. Sometimes it saves you 1 point of damage. And that gets you an extra turn to find your last combo piece and win the game. I don't like having too much removal pre-board. I had Fatal Push as well. And what I found was that I was fine to draw no removal. I liked drawing 1 removal. I hated drawing 2 removal. So one removal in the main makes the deck more consistent, gives you options. If they do have a Dolthy Voidwalker, you can tutor this up and kill it, which is super important to have available. But it's just a good card. It's just a really, really good card. And the other interaction is Sylvan Safekeeper. This is the best extra piece to do with the... you get 2 points of extra mana with Protean Hulk, and this is the best thing that you can do with it pre-board, because it just means that your combo is completely uninteractable. There are times when boarding this out is correct, but if you never do, it's not going to lose you too many games. As opposed to the games where you do board it out and they do have removal, obviously feels pretty bad. Now, fast mana. I have 3 fast mana cards. The first one's Chrome Mox. This is the best one. It makes you a turn faster every time. I was not as high on the other fast mana before I switched to playing all of the Mirage and Portal tutors. The fact of the matter is that when you have, say, a 2-mana tutor and a 3-mana tutor, and you only get to spend your extra mana on one of them, it doesn't make you a whole turn faster. But Chrome Mox, yes, it costs you an extra card out of your hand, but it makes the mana every turn. So you can cast your 2-mana tutor on turn 1, your 3-mana tutor on turn 2, and then you can kill them on turn 3, as opposed to going hand attack on 1, tutor 2, tutor 3, win the game on 4. That said, once I did switch to playing more 1 and 2-mana tutors, Elvish Spirit Guide and Lotus Petal got way better. Elvish Spirit Guide, notably, you can get with Summoner's Pact if you need an extra mana to kill your opponent. I have done that in someone's upkeep to dodge a Pact of Negation, Force of Negation that they ended up having. It was really funny, and he hates me now. These get so much better when you're weaving more stuff into those first 3 turns, and I really like having them. There's basically only one addition that I would make going to 7 points, and that's Mox Diamond. But really, the thing about... Okay, Dark Ritual. Dark Ritual looks really good on paper, but your deck is really pip dense. And Dark Ritual doesn't wind up adding that much mana to the things that you are doing before your combo turn, and even on your combo turn. In fact, when I tested it, often it wouldn't help me to cast my spells at all. So, in the end, these are the ones that you want to play if you're in 8 points, rather. Lands. There are a few sort of categories that I've sorted the lands into. Blue and black fetches. You don't need the green and white ones that aren't blue or black, because blue and black are far and away the most used colors in this deck. I think blue's at like 50% of the cards, black's about 30%, green's 15%, and white is 5%, roughly. Then, Shocklands, obviously. Now, I'm prioritizing islands here on the Shocklands and also the Surveil lands. I am playing 2 Surveil lands. It does not feel great. It is a concession to the number of islands I need to make Mystic Sanctuary work. But generally, one of the big advantages of going to 7 points is having dual lands. You can cut the Hedge Maze, just play the blue-black one. The other non-basics that I'm playing are both blue-black. The basics that I'm playing are islands and a swamp, because you need islands to make Mystic Sanctuary good, and Mystic Sanctuary is a very important way to recover Flash. If things go wrong, again, you've just got to be prepared for things going wrong with this deck, because otherwise you're just too fragile. But between Aurora Procession, Show and Tell, Noxus Revival, Mystic Sanctuary, there are actually a lot of ways to recover if something does happen to your Flash kill, which is good, because you need to be able to respond to that. But yes, most of your deck is blue and black. Focus the mana in blue or black. Islands to make Mystic Sanctuary good. Sideboarding. The sideboard basically just has extra counter magic and silence effects, which are sort of in that category. This allows you to fight opponents' counter magic. Things like Flusterstorm. Flusterstorm is not there for Storm. It is good against Storm, obviously, but it's also just a 1-mana mana leak against the things that you care about out of Grixis most of the time. I.e., you cast Flash, they cast Counterspell, you cast Flusterstorm, counter unless they pay 3. Right. Sometimes it's Spell Pierce, they cast Hand Attack, you cast Flusterstorm. Still more than good enough. You're looking at universal removal, things like Chain of Vapor, Abrupt Decay, and Into the Floodmoor. You've also got your blasts, because Blood Moon kind of ruins you, and that is just a bit unfortunate. And then just things which are extremely efficient. Massacre, Carpet of Flowers. You gain more post board against the decks which beat you game 1 than they do against you. So your post board weirdly is a lot better. Probably not favorable, but your post board against Grixis and against blue control decks, against against black midrange, is a lot closer to even than it looks. Obviously, game 1 is often going to go downhill very quickly, but these are recoverable matchups, and they're like a lot of your match win rate against these decks is going to come from your game 1 percentage, which I don't even think is that bad either. Obviously, it's not good, but you do have ways to come back against these guys, basically, is what I'm saying. Now, 7-point builds. Basically what I was saying. The cards that you gain are dual lands, which enter untapped and do not cost you life. Honestly, the fact that they enter untapped is more important than that they do not cost you life to do so. If these just came in and dealt 2 damage to you, I would still play them because I would not have to play an extra Surveil land. I think that having 2 Surveil lands and Mystic Sanctuary is just too many enters tapped lands, but you got to do what you got to do. That said, the moment that I have the opportunity to cut that Hedge Maze, it's coming straight out. Mox Diamond is also just ridiculously efficient fast mana. I'm on 20 lands, which is, I think, a perfectly fine number to pitch to Mox Diamond. Maybe it could be handy to have one more, but generally speaking, it's just going to be quite efficient. What comes out as this one, Wishclaw, maybe, probably Misstep. It's a tricky call. You could argue that Wishclaw Talisman as a 3-mana tutor isn't good enough, and that Misstep is going to win you more games just by nature of existing. It's going to come down to, do you want a card which adds consistency to your combo, or a card which wins you a lot of games when you see it, right? Because Wishclaw, you're going to win games when you see Wishclaw or something like it. Misstep, you're going to win games because you had Misstep. And, there's pros and cons to either of them. Now, how to actually play the deck? Because, look, when you're playing this many bad cards, you have to play really, really well. I do not do that. I will freely admit. I lost a lot of games because I played these cards poorly. When you're playing 5 top deck tutors, you have to sequence them well. When you're playing, a lot of this stuff. So I think you need to leverage your mulligans. Like I said, I was talking about cantrips versus tutors. You really want to have 2 tutors, ideally 2 tutors and hand attack. With 10 tutors in the deck, perfectly doable. You're happy going down to 5 if it means that you have a hand that is more likely to win the game. A hand that is just hand attacking cantrips, not happening. A hand that is hand attack, counter spells, and a tutor is not happening. You need ways to actually kill them. And you need to do that fast. You also need to anticipate what is the best way that your opponent can interact with you. Is it, does this hand lose to hand attack if I know they're on black midrange? Can I beat a counterspell if I know that they're on blue? Am I dead to Blood Moon? Can I fetch in a way that protects me from Blood Moon? Or can I interact with it? These are things that you really need to keep in mind, because otherwise you're going to spend your mana at the wrong time and you're going to lose the game. You need to know how your opponent's going to stop you, and you need to ideally preempt it if you can with your own hand attack by preparing your own counterspells. You plan around your tutors. This is coming back a bit to when I was talking about mulligans, but you look at the ways that you have to find things. Ideally, you want to be planning your turns around when you're going to find which combo pieces. That's really important as well in terms of sequencing, because obviously with top deck tutors, it's going to affect whether you can draw new cards. When you have multiple top deck tutors, you have to space them out by a turn, unless you have a cantrip to go in between. Generally speaking, you're going to have to space them out by a turn no matter what. So thinking about, do I git probe them to see what they have and then go for my top deck tutor? Do I want to top deck tutor, then git probe, and then top deck tutor? Or do I want to top deck tutor now, then next turn I can use my git probe, and then you plan around your tutors is what I'm getting at. And that's really important so that you can protect your combo pieces, especially your flash. Generally, if I can, I like to make flash the second card that I get. Obviously, if I have like mystical tutor, demonic tutor, I'm gonna turn 1 mystical. But even then, I might mystical for Summoner's Pact. And then I might demonic tutor next turn for flash. These are really important things to keep in mind because flash is the least replaceable part of your combo. And this is something that your top deck tutors can do really effectively. If your opponent has hand attack, and you just, in their face, like personal tutor, put DT on top, they can't take your DT with hand attack. This is kind of, it's a bit of a cope. Definitely, it's not better to have the card on top. You would much rather have the card in your hand. But there are times when it is useful to have the card on top, especially with Limdor's Vault, because Limdor's Vault can, if in response to hand attack, not just put one important piece on top, but ways to find several important pieces. Occasionally, it'll just put your whole ass combo there. There's Limdor's Vault, like I said, busted ass magic card. But obviously, your combo pieces are the most important cards in your deck, so you're going to have to plan around protecting them. Thanks so much for watching. That's the deck. That's how I've built it. That's how I would build several other versions of it. If you know anything about this deck, I'd love to hear feedback. If there's something that you think I didn't factor in, or if there's something that maybe you think you can add, please feel free to share. I'd love to get any help I can with the Invitational qualifier coming up this weekend. And I'd just love to hear back from you guys. So until I see you next time, have a good one.